Welcome to yet another episode of Not Yet Mature, the podcast series talking about life and business, the mix between the two, and hopefully allowing the entrepreneur and founder to find some insights of what the path looks like, or rather, should look like ahead. XCAP has a vision that the ethical business that is formed around servitude and relational transactions should be given the advantage to exit the finite space and enter the infinite games. This, collectively, is our mission and our goal. Without further delay, let's dive into today's chat. Here with me, your host, founder of Exemplo Capital, Dion Richter. Like and subscribe. You know, the usual.
Who has more followers? Virgin or Richard Branson? Trump or the Republicans? Elon or Tesla? I think we all know the answer to that. We know the answer, and surely we actually know why that is. Because we're the followers, we give them that action. Today, specifically, I want to talk about two things: brand and subscription-based models. Personal brands have just become stronger and more important than corporate identity, which is kind of harder, at least, than you think when it comes to my work building infinite businesses, or at least, trying to build infinite businesses. How do you build something infinite when it's centralized around the image of one? The very short, to feature on its own opinionated show here, is the answer is the individual still builds a legacy, and a legacy has the possibility to become infinite. But as I said, discussion for that later. What I want to talk about today is kind of fresh, unscripted. What we are busy exploring, building, and discussing with clients. This is a topic we're busy discussing with clients, and basically they are paying for advice that you are getting for free today. It's a new mini-series in the series route, From Them to You. I think that's what we're going to call the series. We don't know. Their boardrooms to your podcasts. So what is the topic? In sales, we need to really identify new sales techniques, strategies, approaches, and of course revenue streams for our clients. That's our purpose and our goal when we work with in the sales sector, and when clients give us a call, they ring us up and say, Dion, we need either to launch a new product or revenue's down. We need to think of new strategies. And then our role comes in to say, okay, well, what can we do for you? How can we explore this? Now, XCAP's combined client portfolio currently influences about $1 billion. From our clients' revenue streams, about 42.7%. And I'm saying about, obviously I'm seeing the stats on the screen, but this is what we can measure. 42.7 from this billion industry, from the revenue, is from subscription-based models or some form of bundled or buy now, pay later combination. The topic, yes, is subscription-based models. The problem, however, is that when people explore these options, it's often from a place of either, desperation, or a place of not thinking it through, not really, a rush. And with this, it simply doesn't work. Patagonia, for example, a well-established brand, started a buy now, pay later model, which critics call the hypocrisy of the era. The typical corporation trying to sell items to those who cannot afford it. That's how the clientele saw it. Well, their fans did actually not approve of this. Firstly, not everyone should actually offer a subscription-based model, and some companies should consider it slightly a bit more, much more in detail. And this is where the paid part comes in, I guess, because where we can help you by depicting whether whether or not you should, right? So if you're thinking about going a subscription-based model, maybe just get in contact with us, and that's why we're here to help. But in any case, so seriously, that's jokes aside, I want to bring quite a lot to your table here today. So I want to use this opportunity to see what we're busy discussing with clients, and give you some tips on how you can decide for yourself whether you should take the subscription-based model to get some revenue in, or offset. There's various reasons why people enter it. It's not just a sales strategy. It's really a tool, a long-term tool that you can use for a couple of things. And subscription-based models are not always bundled as the way we see it. The Netflix example. Sometimes it's slightly different bundled, like a pay now or buy now, pay later option, pay as you want option. That's also kind of like a subscription based when there's a recurring revenue involved from a subscriber. So there's a couple of other streams from that. So it starts with the personal brand. Yes, something that is actually very much needed if you're asking an entire cohort of consumers and opportunity traders, I guess, to kind of indirectly bootstrap your next ambition, because that's what you're doing through this entire, crowdfunding in the form of subscription-based models. My clients don't like it when I say it, and there's really a lot of truth to that, because although this is boldly stated, really, there's truth to that. People need to be sold to the brand's cause, not just the value offering. As a consumer, I need to be able to relate to the value, be able to relate to the benefit, and the value and the benefit is really not the same. And to know that you will be there when I need to cash in, right? I need to know the subscription-based model. If I want to cash in, especially if it's like things in tourism, I need you to be there when I'm there. So I need to trust the brand's identity, the brand, what they're standing for, their value. I need to trust in the benefits. I need to relate to the brand. Now, there's 3 ages that I need you to remember, and we will talk about them quite a lot this year. The first one is when we look at the eras where the world came from, right? There's a couple of transitions that happened. So there's 3 eras that we need to considerably take into account. The first one is the agricultural era. Then we moved from agriculture to the industrial age or era, and that was the start of capitalism. And then today we find the digital age, the today. Now there's an author who speaks about it with so much wisdom and passion. You can just see what he's talking about. Daniel Presley had an interview with Stephen Bartlett. The podcast name is Diary of a CEO. I would really, really, really recommend that you tune into that, because so much of this motivation comes from that show, where it agrees and aligns with what we're busy with discussing with clients. And that just summed it up so beautifully. So thank you for that. So in this 3 different eras, Daniel said it so nicely. He said with each one, a new set of economical rules came with it. And I actually personally never thought about schools and universities this much, right? So the schooling system and university system that we have today, and there's a lot of talk about it, but that was designed on the industrial capitalism system. And no, I'm not against that, but what I am seeing now is the schooling system, if it doesn't change, it is prepping people, students, for a world that doesn't exist anymore, because the industrial age doesn't exist anymore. Now, just pause on that, because when we talk about the rush in the next episode, we're going to talk about, especially in the mindset of the industrial era, where these businesses that do not adapt to the digital era are the ones that, regardless of their offering, we see them failing overnight. So now the systems are busy prepping someone for jobs that doesn't exist anymore. And we see that. We see the people that complain about, are our jobs safe? Will there be jobs in the future? What does that look like? Those are the people that's thinking, training, and equipping in the industrial age, where we are not in that age anymore. And the same is with business. So why prep or approach something that the methods no longer exist? So why prep a brand on methods that no longer exist? Why prep a brand to an identity that doesn't exist tomorrow? Why prep a company into positions that will no longer be there tomorrow? Why prep this corporate identity or bundle up specific structures or subscription based models on a system aimed at the industrial way of trading and doing business when we're in a new era, right? So these are kind of things that you need to consider. One thing this era tells us is that branding, personal branding, and uncut opinions are what people are interested in. Donald Trump, for example, and I know I mention him a lot now, but he campaigned with this election so much on podcasts. That was his thing. Now, Kamala also did podcasts, but what she did, she went for 10-minute interviews, scripted. She's like, here's the script. These are the questions you ask. Answer, gone, doom, bam. Donald Trump went on comedian shows, actor show, any single show that invited him in. He went there and was like, I'm an open book, ask what you want, and let's see where the conversation go. And I'm going to give you my honest opinion. And because of that, he was this raw, uncut, unedited. In a digital age where people's like, we've got access to this, we're grown up enough to decide, are we going to relate, agree, or whatever he says? We want to make the decision. We want to listen to the podcast. We want to watch the videos. That's what we want to do. We want to stop watching the news telling us what to think, focusing only on the bad things. We want to look at the person. So this personal identity is super strong. Podcasts are such a hit because people can tune into the authenticity of a voice and brand and decide for themselves if they relate or trust or agree or not. Your brand should really be the first thing you identify and build before going through the effort of letting people subscribe to anything. So practically, why? And here's the first advice. Remember, the paid advice for today is subscription-based models. The intentions or reasoning might look different, but in essence, it's a sales approach to crowdfund or to get recurring revenue or bundle up unsellable truth. Bundle up things that you cannot sell truthfully. So, rule number 1. Do not try to make a profit from the individual. The goal is to penetrate the market. Cut down on churn rates and increase revenue. Those are the goals, or at least access to revenue to expand. So do not be focused on a profit. I love to use this analogy where I say, listen, this is very like the insurance game, like what Warren Buffett did with Geico. Geico is not a profitable business model for them. It just gives them access to so much revenue that they can invest at a lot less interest rate than what the banks would have given them. And that's the value point. Even if it does work, what will be next? How could you capitalize from the revenue in such a way that it brings value to you and for your customer? You need to think, if you've got access to this revenue, what will my financial plan allow me to think and do and act with this revenue? Chasing short-term profits with this is way too tricky. It's a top height of an acquisition cost. It's also about long-term with obvious short-term increased revenues, right? So what data should you measure? Because let's be honest, if you want to build a successful subscription-based model, and you've already focused on your brand, that was kind of like the intro on why this is important to establish that first before you go into subscription-based models. But now you're ready to move to the subscription-based model. What are the things that you really need to start measuring? Okay, so there's so many indicators that you can measure, but there's 3 that you can measure yourself. And from that measurement, it should determine what your focus area should be with your subscription-based model and what is the target. So the 3 things that you want to measure is your CAC, your customer acquisition cost. What does it cost to acquire one customer? Futuristic, like what will it cost to acquire that customer to subscribe? But also historic. What does it cost the customer that I currently acquired in my normal sales program? Because my subscription either need to tackle for those losses or you know, the entirety of revenue needs to just be measured differently. So, what did it cost to gain a customer, and what will it cost to continue gaining more customers? The purpose of a subscription based model is graphically to see the trend line depreciate, costing less and less to acquire over time. That's the purpose. Then we've got your CLV, your customer lifetime value. We need to understand how long a customer stays with us, how long they will stay with us, because we need to understand um, what revenue we can get from this customer. And the only thing you need to do to keep them there is exceed or meet the expectation of your MVP or minimum viable product, which we're going to talk about in a second. And then the last thing is the opposite of the CLV. What's your customer churn rate currently, and what do you predict it to be? Like, if I know this customer 3 years along the line, physically he would not need my product, so that's a churn rate on 3 years time, right? So those are the three things that you should be able to measure straight away, and you can use that to your advantage to decide on a subscription based model what really is a target here. So to build a successful subscription based model, those three values are the ones you would need to change or allow to carry one another without affecting exterior company operations. Once you have that, and you start building a 10-year financial model with a DCF, discounted cash flow, incorporated function, very important. Now only should you be building the actual model. So we want to know certain values, then we want to build the financial model to see how the valuation will pan out, the revenue streams will pan out. So then we can decide what should we put in the bundle in the first place to be able to meet these targets and work with a great DCF model. That makes sense. If you don't understand these terms, please reach out to us. We do have free consultation. We can help you with certain things. We can give you some great templates, and we would love to help you. So why are these important? Because if it's built around the future subscribers, that's the purpose of a subscription-based model. It's about future subscribers. Only data can help you determine the best course of action. Your heart needs to be of servitude, but your brain needs to be connected, not connected, disconnected from your pride and your personal emotions, but statistically analyzed. A data-centric financial model will ensure that you don't really miss out of the purpose of the bootstrap model. The small incurring costs that you forget about. So that's why we work with a financial model. There's the smallest of costs that remember, we're planning a 10-year curvature year. Small cost that incurs daily over 10 years period will cost you your company at the end of the day. Or it will make your company be non-investable. So you'll have this massive revenue streams, would need to sell, someone sells it for a bargain, and they just bring out a great financial model to analyze where this recurring cost was, and they make a success, and you lost out on it, right? So be very careful. The small incurring costs that you forget about, the slow sellers that can be moved quicker, and the high marginal items that can now be sweetened up. That's what we're looking for in the financial model. The advice will seriously differ on this. I've seen companies build the ultimate subscription models with the wrong market strategy and underdeliver on one small thing, or to them at least, but the way they advertised it, it looked like a massive MVP, minimal viable product to the consumer, and people got angry for subscribing. Yes, they were warned, these people that we work with, that you're going to upset your consumer because you're bundling it wrong on the wrong MVP, yet they still decide to continue. So MVP, ironically, everyone knows this stands for minimum viable product. If you didn't, then, well, now you know now. The irony, as clearly that was not ironic, is that, although, especially business owners, this is where the irony is. They know it is minimum viable, yet they treat it as MVP in the sense of most valuable product. Let me quickly explain. Good intentions, I guess, as most of our intentions usually are. The issue is the placement box. And this is the placement box. You can treat something as a minimum viable product, which you should with subscription-based models, or a most valuable product. And depending on how you think, this is the placement box, right? Where you put yourself mind, and where you put yourself mind, that's where the action turns into. So in the placement box, most valuable usually lets us put it in the box of how we as a company or product owners see it, meaning we see the value in it, not the consumer. Where minimum viable puts it in the box of how it is perceived, how the client experiences it. So, working with clients, building subscription based models, or even just building value around their brand, you can easily pick up where they are at mentally. The most valuable usually defends its products by enforcing or forcing sales and subscriptions when the market shows no interest. They usually say, well, this is a good offer and everyone should take it. However, the clients that we work with the mindset of the minimum viable headspace knows that the client that's already buying will only buy if the minimum viable aspect of the subscription or service not only meets but exceeds expectations. It needs to meet their expectations. I'm expecting this product or subscription to offer me this, to service me in this way. It needs to meet that or exceed it. I don't care about the value. The value is something that you find valuable. I see it different. I see it as a viable factor. I hope you see the difference. Netflix charges, I think, what's it now in South Africa, $200 a month. This subscription's value depends on the MVP headspace. So, how's that headspace look like? It's not how they package it or their value. Let's be honest. For the volume of available options, it's a bargain. Before you argue, feel free to take your kids to the Stir Kiniko movie, I dare you. And you will come back and say, okay, Netflix is a bargain. However, the same argument, if you have a minimum expectation that there should be new shows and movies daily, constantly, less Adam Sandler movies, they will fail to meet your expectations. And not once did they change their model. It's what you perceive, what you expect. Their value is still the same. It's exactly the same. But if the consumer, if your expectation is that the MVP just allows for kids entertainment and 1 to 2 movies over weekends with the option to binge watch docuseries or all the favorites, then $200 is a bargain. The same example why Stir Kiniko will never make beyond 5 years. Whoever's in charge, feel free to reach out. We would love to help you out with whatever you're busy doing. But honestly, their MVP focus and value offering is so short-sighted that the only thing they blame is the digital age. Consumers still crave the experience and actually don't mind the cost. Okay, maybe a little, but the expectations are on greater things. And this is the issue with me going unscripted, right? So side notes of notes, over-explaining why I'm over-explaining, and I apologize. So I went from establishing a brand first before you go into subscription-based model. Now we're criticizing Stir Kiniko on this. So back to today. When it comes to subscription-based models, package strategically, play the longer game, offer carefully, and always be in the position to deliver. All good? But can you afford this? Is it scalable? Is it sellable? Or is it investable? You need to know this beforehand. It's okay if it's not scalable. It's okay if it's not investable. But is it sellable? Can you sell this product? Scalable and investable usually is we want subscription-based model to get as much revenue as possible so that we, with the DCF function, put ourselves in evaluation for venture capitalists or someone else to invest and scale my company bigger. However, not every single company, please do not take pride in this, not every single, or don't let your pride get offended, not every single company is scalable or investable, but your products and your company should be sellable. And then it's fine. And vice versa. If the recurring revenue does not make the business sellable, surely it should put you in a scalable position, meaning you can get access to all this revenue, not getting profits, so it's not a sellable company. However, because of this revenue stream, less churn rates, and continue recurring revenue, it puts me in a position where I can scale the company. We, generally speaking, like advising to try and follow as closely to this trend as possible. And here's the trend. You want to make recurring revenue at a net break even or gross profit. And you want to make this from the market to A, increase cash flow, and B, increase market capitalization or place in the market. That is, I'm going to say that again. Generally speaking, the idea of subscription-based models, when we implement it, the method that we use is we want to make a recurring revenue at a net break even, not net profits, or at worst at a gross profit. And this profit should come from the market, not the individual. And the purpose of this is to increase cash flow that we can use or increase our footprint in the market. With the financial model phase, you want to start building your subscription-based models offering. So now we look at these things, and now we can depict how are we going to build a bundle to get these results. What should be in that bundle? And this is what I'm going to tell you. Carefully determine your MVP according to the consumer's expectations, not your thoughts. So if you need to run surveys, run surveys. If you need to get data, get data. If you need to call up your customers, actually pick up the phone and just call them. Why are you using us? When was the last time you've asked your customers, why are you using us? Determine what they see your MVP is, what they hold you accountable, why and when they complain. Stop deciding for yourself what you see the MVP is, because that is a value proposition according to you, and it's not a viable proposition according to their expectations. Your value propositions, interesting enough, this is separate to your MVP. This is something you should also determine before building this. I'm not saying neglect it, I'm just saying see it separately, so that you collectively with all this data can determine exclusivity features. What are features that is really exclusive? Because this is the goal. The goal is to build 8 to 12 models, not 1, 2, and 3, 8 to 12 models, combining the different combinations and matching it to your financial model. So you're going to build this 8 models with different combinations. You're going to feed that information into your financial model. You're going to print everything out. You're going to look at it on the wall, and you're going to see this is the course of action based on the rules of, what did I say? Recurring revenue. So which option gives me the most recurring, not the most value, or the most recurring revenue with the least churn rates, that is also equal to a net break even, so not far loss. It can slightly be in the short term, but overall, and not too high in profits, which also takes my company's product and presence into a bigger market capitalization. And that's the course of action. So combining the different combination and matching it to your financial model, that's what we're talking about. Choosing the best option that has a net break even and the closest to zero churn rate. Why? This option will be the mine that brings in recurring revenue to grow, expand, or increase on that market cap. With a less risk of losing that revenue. Then the option with the highest net profit margin, because there will be one of those options, with a churn rate below 20%, that will be the one that you consider as your secondary option. Remember, people give 3 options out there. Our advisors give 2. So the first one will be the one closest to the zero churn rate, biggest market cap, and highest recurring revenue. And then the second one would be the one with the biggest profit margin, but with a churn rate below 20%. Can be much higher than the other one, but just below 20%, because that's the other option that we're going to put out there. There are a couple of more factors to consider when building and deciding on your financial model and approach, and some financial models are better data-driven with predictive analytics than others. But the gist of it is this. Approach the market and not the individual. Be careful not to approach a saturated market with the same value offering. Know where your offer is vulnerable, especially for new players. Although you developed 8 to 12, only offer 2, not 3 as the usual, 2. Depending on your target market and the cohorts you market or sell to, the combination of 2 can differ and change. Meaning you've got 12 models, you can combine them separately. You can combine 2 models at a time and go to a specific cohort group like teenagers and offer them those 2 options, adults those 2 options. Cruise liners and travel agencies do this a lot. They have subscription-based plans for retired people that has access to a lot of funds. They usually go to exclusive things that you can buy now and travel now and again and again and again. For teenagers, they usually bring out options and say, here's the travel options. You can book it now, but you need to pay every single month. So they do have different recurring revenues situations that came from the same financial model because they built 12 models. So you can mix and match with the 2 cohorts. There is a science behind not offering 3, which I'm not going to tell you yet because I would love to have the conversation. So reach out to us and say, Dion, please tell me, why should we only, in life, in sales, not offer 3 options, but only 2 at a time? And I'll have a very interesting conversation with you. So these are some of the things we look at during our research phase. When we have to build, giving the free tools, these are the things that we look at. We look at customer willingness and demand over supply and demand. We look at pricing strategy over profit margins. We look at member benefits over sales KPIs. We look at flexibility and cancellation policies that will serve yet not sink. We look at regulatory and legal compliance over loopholes. We look at operational and logistical readiness. Can you deliver what you suggest and the known caps that they are? As a reminder, we look at the customer acquisition costing and the customer lifetime value over assumption. We look at scalability and break-even analysis. Yes, subscription models need to be scaled, not just full steam ahead. Let's just boom, put it out there. You need to scale it. There are a couple of unless-us with this rule. So it really depends on what you're offering. Then we also look at industry analysis over competitor advantages. We're there to serve the industry, and then what tech to use, what payment integrations, and how to make it accessible is also one thing we look at. Then our last advice is this. Your research will give you the how-tos, the pros, and the hefty advice, good advice. But also consider the bad advice as well, or rather the disadvantages. Depending on your industry and approach, these are a couple of things that we think is worth considering or at least keeping at the back of your mind. First of all is high customer churn rate. You can actually lose more customers than gaining, even existing ones, like Patagonia, with your subscription-based model. Consider seasonality and demand fluctuations, especially with like in the travel industry. Your research needs to be very thorough when collecting data on specific cohorts. Consider upfront investment and cash flow challenges. A good financial model should be able to show and cater for this in advance. A bad financial model, because the opposite of good is bad, so it's not the lack of, it's just having a bad one, should be able to actually cause this. Then perceived value versus one-time purchase. Your opinion and pride really does not matter with subscription-based models. Listen to your audience. It's really rarely about what you offer, but always about what they perceive. Complexity in managing bookings and availability. CRM, process automation, and AI is your best friend. And this helps with your branding as well, when your brand alignment or your brand voice, if you want to put it like that. That really helps with that as well. Use them, build a proper management tool and system. Then pricing pressure and customer expectations, 99 Rand versus $100 debit order scenario. You know which one sticks and which doesn't. Legal and contractual risks. This is something that people with subscription based models, the idea is to go with a market cap far beyond your current borders. So usually that takes you international, but your T's and C's that you put in does not overrule any local legislation or local laws, consumer acts, etc. So it doesn't help you just go with terms and conditions that you find from ChatGPT. You really need the best lawyers that specializes in this type of thing to help you get the right T's and C's. Otherwise, you'll be surprised, especially when you work with this volume of revenue. If someone wins a case against you, they can go class action way, and you would be in the position to not only pay that client back, but everyone back. And you might say, but my T's and C's says this, but it doesn't overrule any local legislations, local laws, consumer acts, and things like that. It's difficult to predict long-term or term demand. Always check on your initial pointers. And then check back on your CRVs, check back on your CACs, your customer acquisition costs, check back on your MVPs, on this one, both sides, your churn rates. Check back on things. Don't do the initial assessment, build the model, penetrate the model. Like, check back. How does it change? Does your churn rates drop, and does your profit margins go up? Does your acquisition costs go down? You need to market less. Measure these things constantly, because this will always also tell you if you need to try out one of your other models, other combinations, or start building again. Then lower profitability per customer over time, hence why the market over individual, because this is a concern. And then marketing and educational challenges. Know what you know in your industry and the values, and your customers would need to be educated. So educate them, working on the first knowledge principle. We've talked about the first knowledge principle so many times. So I hope today this helped a bit. If so, give it a share, follow, and send in your requests or opinions, and let's talk about it. So thank you for joining in today, and have a great one.
Welcome to yet another episode of Not Yet Mature, the podcast series talking about This is Not Yet Mature. And you are listening to Dion Richter. Thanks for being here. Please subscribe to our channels.